This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another Wolff Responds. This one is about the crossroads we are facing in the relationship between the United States and the People's Republic of China. It was building as a problem. It was then egregiously intensified in the 4 years of the Trump regime. And so it now presents itself in an intensified way to the new Biden government. They're going to have to make a basic decision, and it's that I want to comment on. The People's Republic of China is now the major global economic competitor for the United States. To be as blunt as the time requires, the United States is a descending economic power in the world. Its greatest moments of triumph and dominance basically run from the end of World War II to the early decades of the 21st century. Over the last 30 years, the ascending economic power in the world is the People's Republic of China. For at least 25 years, that economy has grown 2 to 3 times faster, year after year, than that of the United States. They have a peculiar mixture, peculiar in the sense that it isn't that common, of private capitalist enterprises and government-owned and operated public enterprises. Both kinds of enterprises share the employer-employee relationship. A relatively small number of people are employers, either private citizens or government officials, and a vast number of people are employees of one or the other. This mixture, regulated and controlled by a very powerful political party, in China it's the Communist Party, has no parallel here in the United States, where the overwhelmingly dominant part of the economy is the private sector, where two parties operate a political monopoly between them, and both of them are committed to maintaining a private capitalist-dominated economic system with a very constricted set of roles for the government. Now, between these two alternative economic powerhouses, the balance has been changing, and that's the issue. The Chinese have grown faster than the United States. They will continue to do that as the statistics come in for the COVID year of 2020. Indeed, in that year, the Chinese economy is still growing at about 3.5%, while the United States economy is shrinking at about that same level. A very big difference. The fact of the matter is, and there is no escaping this other than by the mechanism we call denial. The Chinese economy, with a population 4 times larger than the United States, has been able to mobilize both public and private resources, public and private companies, under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, to keep their COVID cases and their COVID deaths a tiny fraction of those in the United States, even though the Chinese have 4 citizens for every 1 that the United States has. No one in the rest of the world is missing that the system in China has been growing much faster than the United States for 25 years and just came through one of the worst public health threats in human history, far better than that achieved so far by the United States. But there's more. Mr. Trump tried not to cooperate with the Chinese as had been done by Republican and Democratic governments in the United States since Nixon and Kissinger reestablished relationships with China. No, no. Mr. Trump tried something else. He tried to attack China economically, a trade war, a series of tariffs designed to somehow cripple China, force it to change its economic system, which was said, punish it, which was said, bring it to heel, which was said, and none of it worked. That policy was a total failure. The Chinese got around the trade war very well, and the tariffs very well. The United States, less so. Lesson should be learned here. The Chinese are busily expanding their relationships with the rest of the world economy, while the United States can't even hold on to its relationships, neither diplomatic nor economic. The biggest news of the last 2 weeks was the Chinese signing major economic agreements with the single most important economy in Europe, the Germans, to the chagrin of the United States, over the opposition of Mr. Biden's advisors. Here's my point. The United States grew pretty well in the 1980s and 90s and into this century, cooperating with the People's Republic of China, finding ways to participate in their growth, allowing them to participate in our growth, working out a way for both economies to function pretty well. But the Chinese are catching up. They want their place in the economic sunlight, to no one's surprise. What they have achieved is what the vast majority of poor countries in the world dream about, going from poverty and backwardness to a modern, powerhouse, high-tech economic system. They are not going to stop what has worked so well. The Trump administration failed to stop it. What will Biden do? He ought to go back to find a cooperative solution. Not only because we did better that way before, not only because the Trump aggressive nationalism failed, not only because the Chinese system clearly has figured out how to do some major important things better than the United States has been able to do. But there's another, ultimately more compelling reason. Economic trade wars, tariff wars, competition, attacks on corporations, they have a nasty way of sliding into military confrontations. And between two nuclear powers, that is a more awful prospect than I want to discuss, or that the Biden administration ought to risk entering into. It's time to drastically break from the Trump failed program and to reevaluate the need for a cooperative, live and let live relationship between the United States and the People's Republic of China, two economies that need to work out an accommodation. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.